and Development Manager in Digital Learning with Scottish Social Services Council. So Keith, away you go.
Thanks very much, Nessa. Thanks for that introduction, and folks should be grateful they can't see me right now. I was just saying to Nessa, a trip to the barbers once lockdown ends is definitely on order. I'm going to try and go through a lot of material in a condensed amount of time, and I'm really keen to leave time for questions, because I like the kind of, I think some of the most important learning comes out of the dialogue. So I'm going to run through a lot of stuff pretty quickly. And here's a caveat: when Nessa said, "Could you do a webinar?" I said, "Yeah, here's 3 topics. Which one do you want me to do?" And she said, "Could you just kind of squeeze them all together?" So, batten down the hatches, because we're going to have a fairly rapid canter through a whole load of stuff. But hopefully you'll get some ideas here that you can take forward. And I look forward to seeing some of your questions and comments at the end. So, first up, I'm going to talk about tools and media. And I suppose one of the best bits of advice, just to kick us off, is use what you have. You don't really need expensive, elaborate authoring tools to create quick, flexible, and engaging learning. So one of the things I wanted to start off with was to talk to you about podcasts. Audio and standalone audio is often really wildly overlooked, but podcasts have were kind of really quite popular in the early days of the web, and then they fell out of favour, and now they're coming back pretty strong. The great thing from your viewpoint and from my viewpoint is that podcasting is a really inexpensive thing to do. You can basically create good learning content with a fairly cheap microphone, a laptop, and some free software. So on my kind of network of contacts across the world, there's an organisation that uses a laptop, 2 microphones, and a CD full of sound effects, and they record podcasts in a disused stationery cupboard. And they use the podcast to train people who work out and about in the community. And it has been highly, highly effective. So you don't need a lot of expensive software. So on the screen there, you'll see Audacity. It's free, so you can't get much cheaper than free. And you can both record and edit into Audacity. And it works across any platform. But if you really want to go absolutely to the basics, you can even record on a smartphone or tablet, where there's actually a really good set of tools available on there as well. And if anybody's interested, give me a shout, and I would send you the links. One of them is a thing called Ferrite Studio. Again, you can record and edit. On the left-hand side there is Libsyn, which means Liberated Syndication. And you only really need Libsyn if you want to put your podcasts on public portals like Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Unfortunately, Google won't let us publish on the Google Podcasts because we're not in North America, which seems a bit strange. But Libsyn is where we host our podcast, and it provides the feeds to the other distribution services. It costs the princely sum of $5 per month. So for the year, we tried to pay the whole lot up front for a whole year, and the guys that ran Libsyn didn't know how to do that. I mean, I think in my head, I think Libsyn, must be a couple of old hippies in California somewhere, but their service is rock solid, really, really good, very, very cheap. But you only really need that if you're going to put your audio content out in the world. If you want to deliver it behind a firewall, you can still create your podcast, still create your audio, and you can host it on your own intranet. One of the great things about podcasts is they're hands-free, so people can be doing other things while they're listening, and they don't have to be the kind of radio talk show format, that kind of interview, question and response. The company I was talking about that develops podcasts and to train their remote workers, they use story-based podcasts. So it's like a serialized story. And I'm going to come back to that later on in this presentation because there's another bit of advice I want to give you about how you make the most of your offerings. Next up is if you need to show people how to do new things, new processes, new forms, new ways of doing things on your network, you're going to want to look at screencasting, where you can record all your activity on a screen. So if you're on a Windows PC, you're going to want to use something like Camtasia, which is produced by the company TechSmith. The link I've put on the screen there is TechSmith's explanation about how to use screencasting. Really, really good guide. Camtasia is probably one of the best screencasting bits of software for Windows. It is a bit pricey, but it is pretty good. If you are working on a Mac computer, you can do it for free. QuickTime that comes bundled with the operating system will let you record either your entire screen or even just application windows. So you can get into some detailed walkthroughs of how to do certain new processes. And if you combine that with Keynote on the Mac or PowerPoint on Windows, you can create some interesting presentations where you can have motion graphics, and the Wistia link on the screen takes you through how to do it in Keynote, but the principles you can apply to PowerPoint as well. The great thing about doing motion graphics or including or pasting in your screencast videos into a presentation is that both Keynote and PowerPoint will let you run or record your presentation so you can create a voiceover. And then when you get to the end of your presentation, you export the whole thing as a video. And again, if you want to use public portals like YouTube or Vimeo, you can do that, or you can put the video on your intranet. These, I mean, people often overlook these because they think they're just for doing presentations like this one, but actually, both Keynote and PowerPoint have got some fairly sophisticated motion graphic tools that are built in, and you don't have to be a graphic designer. Just use whatever you can get your hands on, and you can create some really compelling videos. Next up, I want to talk to you about ebooks. Ebooks, despite the name, aren't just text. We produce a lot of ebooks because it allows us to combine media. So ebooks can contain text, video, audio, hyperlinks to resources online, a whole bunch of interactive stuff. And the beauty about ebooks is you download it once and the media is there. So if you're on Mac, the best tools for that are iBooks Author and Pages. iBooks Author is a free download, and Pages comes with the operating system. It's basically Apple's version of Microsoft Word. Both of these, iBooks Author offers much more interactivity that you can put into an ebook. Pages will let you do a fair amount of interactivity, and it'll export straight to ebook format. On Windows, unfortunately, the only real way to do it is to use Adobe InDesign, which you would need to buy a license to use. And I suppose the main barrier with InDesign is it's a fairly steep learning curve to get your head around it. So in our team, we use iBooks Author and Pages. It's just much more straightforward. And I'm going to give you a couple of examples of ebooks in a wee while. Next up is interactive PDFs. PDFs aren't just about text. And again, if you're on Mac, Pages, and if you're on Windows, Word will let you produce basic documents where you can have a layout, and you can add interactive fields, text fields in Acrobat, Adobe Acrobat Pro. That allows you to create basically digital worksheets. So you can have information included in the PDF, but you can also create activities and have learners record the responses in free text. And then when they save the PDF, it keeps all of that data so that you can then send it to somebody else for review. And if you use Adobe InDesign as your interactive PDF creation tool, you can even add things like video and audio. It's not as straightforward as creating ebooks, so I wouldn't recommend it. But we use a lot of PDFs with text fields for learners to record their responses to activities. And it means that you can keep your activity in a shareable format that they can then upload or send to anybody that they need to do that. And finally, in this section, I want to talk to you about WordPress. WordPress, its origins were as a tool for creating blogs. But you can create a whole range of web presences in WordPress. And the great thing, again, you'll notice I like things that are free. WordPress is free. So you can either create sites by getting somebody with the technical know-how to install it on your network or domain, or you can do it via the WordPress site itself and create a free website. And you can style all of that with templates that are freely available. So examples of where we've used WordPress are here. So you've got 23 Digital, which is our digital capabilities learning resource, and the address is there. That's a WordPress site. And then the one below it, 23 Leadership, is 23 things for everyday leadership, and that's just recently been launched. And these are two examples where they use the same template, but they're styled slightly differently, but they've been done in WordPress. And the beauty about WordPress is not only is it free, but the interface is not that far away from using a word processor. So if you're pretty good at using Microsoft Word, you're going to be able to work with WordPress. And the beauty is that you can update your resource whenever you want. If you're the admin, you log in and you make the text edits and image edits or whatever you need to do. You don't need to go back to an external contractor to have changes made. So those are kind of 6 of the kind of key flexible tools that are available. I mean, the best tool in your toolbox, though, is your imagination. Be creative and be engaging. And these tools will let you do that because they are, in essence, a blank canvas. And it's just about, and do what everybody in the digital learning community does. Go out on the web, find examples, and look at what works for you and use those examples in your own projects. There's a fantastic book called Steal Like an Artist by Austin Kleon, and that's Kleon. And he talks about if you look at what artists do, they steal ideas from all around the world. I mean, steal's a harsh word. They repurpose ideas. They get inspiration from stuff that they find online. And I and a few other people in my digital learning network, we use Pinterest. As we find things online, we think, oh right, I like that interface, or I like that interaction there. I'm going to pin that so that I can remember at a later date. So Pinterest becomes the repository for inspiration and ideas. So what to move on to delivering your learning. The key thing here is think about bandwidth. You've got no guarantees about the internet connections at the learner end of the process. And think about the devices they might be using. We know, because we've looked at the stats for the Office for National Statistics, that I think the penetration rate of smartphones is up around 90% for the kind of 25 to 50-year-olds, which tend to be the bulk of the workforce. And at the younger end, it's about 98%, 99%. And at the upper end, sort of 55 plus, it drops to about 83%. But we also know that after that comes tablets. Tablets have had a massive uptake since the pandemic hit. And before the pandemic, the penetration rates were sitting at 75%. And then after that comes laptops, about 70%. So think about the devices and think about the density of information you're trying to get across on these devices. One of the big things I would say about the mobile devices, the smartphones and tablets, is that the absolute benefit for delivery on those devices is because of the accessibility capabilities that are built right into the operating systems. So the Apple devices have got extensive accessibility options, including navigating the whole device itself. And Google's Android operating system has got similar arrangements. So, you know, you can create stuff for delivery on mobile, and by virtue of making a few tweaks to your offering, it will actually be, have accessibility baked right in. So think about that and think about the devices folk might use. The other big thing is think about the time that they have available. Now, at the moment, we know that there are early years workers who've been furloughed, so they've got more time on their hands and will do bigger chunks of learning. But we also know that folk in care home environments are under considerable pressure, and they're likely to have less. The way that we traditionally have done it over the last few years is we've taken cognizance of the research data, which tells us that folk have on average about, kind of 20 minutes a week available to them for learning across all industries. In our sector, we have been told that's more like 10 minutes a week. So what we do is we break learning down into about, kind of 15-minute chunks, and we make the learning cumulative. So we don't expect people to sit down and do 3 hours worth of learning straight, because we know that they just don't have time. The other big bit of advice is combine media. Don't rely on one approach to deliver the whole learning experience. So to go back to the podcast example, the company that's training the remote workers, they have the audio story, the podcast story as the kind of core of the learning experience, but they supplement that with documents, PDFs, interactive PDFs that are linked to the story and linked to the skills and duties that they're trying to train staff to do. So think about combining media. Don't think you're going to do it all on a one hit just because you've done one video, that's enough. Think about how you can usefully combine media to create a much richer experience. So we've got 2 resources for you that might help. On the left is the making the most of mobile learning, and there's a huge amount of material in there, and there's a whole chapter just on podcasting, but it covers video, audio, how to embed mobile devices into learning experiences, how to get folk to collaborate online, etc., etc. Whole bunch of stuff. The book on the right, Build Your Own 23 Things. That's a guide, a step-by-step guide about how you can install, configure, and create content for your own WordPress website. We've kind of built it. When we first set up 23 Digital, we got inundated with people saying, "Can you show us or help us to set up our own 23 Things website?" And because there's only me and 3 staff, we just simply didn't have the time. So we created this step-by-step guide that walks you through the whole process from installing the software, creating the content, how to create open badges, and then deploying a learning resource. And and there's videos and walkthroughs of all the kind of key processes, and tons of useful links to help you make the most of that. So they're available. If you've got an iPad or a MacBook, you can get them from Apple Books. If you don't, you can get them from our Learning Zone, and the links are there. So they're free, they don't cost you a thing, and they're Creative Commons, so you can reuse the content in any way you like. So next up, don't forget learner support. This is really, really vital. It's not just a case of taking what you did in the classroom, sticking it on some slides and putting it online. Many of the folk that you're dealing with right now might be new to online or digital learning. And they're good. So learning on their own might be a brand new experience for them. So you have to think about how to support those learners. And I'm going to give you links to a couple of books that will help with that. But when you're thinking about learner support, think about how you use your online time. So there's a concept called the flipped classroom. Flipped classroom's been around for a long time. It's maybe not so common in workforce development as it is in academic institutions, but the idea is that instead of seeing your time in front of students or learners, or in this case online, as a means of delivering content, the idea is give them the content in advance. Let them read, watch, listen to whatever it is you need them to absorb, and then use your time online to have a discussion about that content, rather than the other way around, hence the flipped classroom idea. You might also need to think about synchronous and asynchronous sessions. So what we're doing right now is synchronous. We're all in this experience at the same time. The video recording of this is the asynchronous, where we're not all viewing it at the same time. So if you've got people on different shift patterns, you need to think about, if I'm going to do a webinar, do I just do it as a one-shot deal? And if you're not there, you're not there. Or are you going to do what Nessa's doing and record the session and make it available to people who can't be there? I've participated in international conferences and MOOCs where we had learners in South America, Australia, Eastern Europe, and North America, where time zones became an issue. So most of the kind of, if you like, class contact was asynchronous. Even the discussion was asynchronous. So you posted a comment and you might get your reply 12 hours later. So think about how you're going to organize your online time. And give a serious consideration to discussion forums. If you think about how you've learned in the workplace, you've probably done a lot of learning for colleagues. Discussion forums is your online version of being able to do that. We've recently introduced discussion forums to our Open Badge platform. We didn't advertise them. We just kind of made them available, and the people who had accounts started using them. And I think in about 4 days, we went from here's a brand new empty discussion forum to 1,500 posts. And it's where people can ask questions and get answers for people who've maybe been down the same road as them in the past. So, got to pay attention to learner support if you want your digital learning to be successful. So I said I would give you some books to help. First one is this one, Design for How People Learn by Julie Dirksen. I recommend this to everybody who's new to digital learning. It's not difficult to read, it's very practical, and it covers all the key components that you're going to need to think about for modern digital learning. I honestly can't recommend it highly enough. It's an absolutely fantastic book, very, very accessible. Next up, you've got 2 books by Gilly Salmon. One is Etivities. That I would suggest that's more a kind of dip in and dip out. If you're not sure about how to create activities that work online, Jilly's book, Eativities, is a really good starting point to get some initial ideas. And then, like I was saying earlier, go online and steal ideas from all over the place. But Jilly's is a good starting point. The next one, E-Moderating by Jilly Salmon, that really is, the kind of cornerstone textbook about how to teach online. People often assume that teaching online is the same as teaching in a classroom, and it is very, very, very different. But Jilly's book will take you through the process. Can't recommend it enough. Really, really good book. And if you want a quick taster, you'll see on the screen there that video, the 5-stage model of learning for online and blended learning. That's the image on the screen is the 5-stage model, and you'll get that in much more detail in Jilly's book about e-moderating. But that video on YouTube gives you a good introduction. And then below that on Jilly's website is how to develop Eativities. And again, it's a combination of text and video, and it will give you the basics. It will give you enough to get started. And then from there, you can dive into the book in a bit more detail if you really want to. But again, either that or Julie Dirksen, or both. I mean, like I say, I can't recommend Julie's book highly enough. Okay, so that's a quick canter through the tools and media, and I just pause to take breath and get some water.
Keith, it's Nessa.
Sorry, on you go, Nessa.
So we're coming up to past, so I'm just going to butt in to give you a time check, but also to make a point. Lots of people exchanging a few points there in the chat function, really, and I've shared the links that you've been putting up slides. I'm not obviously an educator, or I'm not delivering or providing education, but I've read the Julie Dirksen. I just wanted to chip in my 2 cents worth. And I think it's excellent. And I think especially the way she helps you to think about the person who you're working with and how they perceive and experience education, and the things she says about evaluation, I found really helpful, just in general.
I had the good fortune to interview Julie for our LearnCast podcast, and she's such an interesting person. She really is, and I mean, she knows her stuff. I mean, really knows her stuff. But the beauty of the book is it doesn't hit you a lot of heavy academic theory. It's
so easy,
very practical. Yeah, so easy to get into.
And we've had a comment just from Leslie, hi Leslie, to say that she would also recommend Jilly Salmon's e-moderating book, that it's excellent as well. So I will let you carry on.
Okie doke. So, making a difference. Right, so here's the key question. What is it you're trying to measure? Because if you can't answer it, somebody else will. And they probably won't even know which question to ask, because they really don't know either. And what occurs to me at the moment is everywhere I go, there are discussions about, can we get more analytics? Can we get more numbers? Can we get more data? Because there's this belief that, kind of numbers are going to tell us everything we need to know. And, well, they're going to give you a glimmer of a picture. But what you have to bear in mind about numbers is they're the easy bits to record. And the easy bits aren't going to necessarily give you the full picture. And I really liked this quote by Dave Cormier. I don't know if folk know Dave Cormier is quite a famous name in the e-learning community. He's been around for decades working in e-learning, and was one of the co-creators of the first ever MOOC, massively open online course. And I loved this when I saw it on Twitter. You can't actually measure learning. And that kind of, makes the point about data is only part of the picture. It's absolutely not going to give you what you need in terms of, is my learning making an impact? And I love this quote. This is Donald Clark. And again, Donald's been very active in digital learning for 20 plus years. I particularly like the bottom bit. If you just focus on data, it gives you the wrong message. It's illusory. And it's like measuring bums on seats. It measures the wrong end of the learner. I have to say, when I first saw that on LinkedIn, I did laugh, and I thought I'm going to use that every opportunity I get. Because the thing about data-driven learning solutions is they foster this, which is the dreaded click next e-learning. Again, I saw this on LinkedIn last October and just thought it was hilarious, but sadly very, very true. I call it click next e-learning, you know, that thing where you read the screen, click the next button, click the next, and then eventually you get to a quiz. The e-learning guild, which is the big global digital learning community, they call it scrap e-learning. And I have to say, I think scrap pretty much describes it. What we're keen to do is if you take nothing else away for this part of the presentation, take this away. Clicks or hits and quiz scores do not equal competence or impact. And what we want to do is really re-emphasize the importance of learning, and you know, and look at learning as it's not a one-off event. It's not just transferring information, it's a process. And stripped back to the basics, we kind of say to folk, you should be thinking about how learners acquire, apply, reflect on, and record their learning experiences, because that whole process will help embed the learning. Just sitting through, you know, sitting folk in front of information and getting them to do a quiz is not going to do it. And we need to focus more on evaluating impact on practice than we do on analytics. And so that not only means we need to change how we evaluate, but we also need to change how we design for learning. So how are we going to do that? Highly recommend that you read this. It's by Will Thalheimer, Dr. Will Thalheimer, and it's based on years of research. It's called the Learning Transfer Evaluation Model, and basically that model provides our framework that we use to guide us when we're designing learning. So I'm going to give you, I mean, don't worry about being able to focus on this because there's a lot of material. This is just a one-page summary where Thalheimer breaks down learning, transfer, or evaluation into 8 levels. So where a lot of current learning management systems focus is down at this end. It takes attendance. Did the person, you know, do the learning experience? Did they engage in the activities? And did they like the course? Sadly, none of these things tell you if the learning was effective at all. Nor does the fact that they understand it can retain knowledge or can they repeat it. It doesn't enable performance. And usually these tests of retention and recitation are done at the end of the learning experiences. Like I once, or I've had to do a couple of times, this data protection piece of online learning, and I got 99%, I think, for completing it. And I've got absolutely no idea what was in it. But at the time, I could, you know, recite what I'd just read. So learner perceptions are very subjective. And, you know, they're not going to tell you if somebody's actually learned anything or not. So where we focus our attention when we're designing learning is on levels 5, 6, and 7. So during and after the event, can they make competent decisions based on what they've learned? Are they competent in the tasks that we need them to be competent in, not just at the time they do the learning, but afterwards? And can they transfer that learning to related areas of work? And can somebody else attest to that? So it's important that we pay attention at these levels. Level 8 is quite high level. And, you know, I mean, it's something that we as a team might aspire to if we had a big workforce internally where we could actually action that. But that's very high level. So we look at our design processes and say, could we can we design learning that supports the approaches to that? So in your current learning management systems, out of the box, probably what you'll find is that they'll record typically what's on levels 1, 2, 3, and 4. So that's your analytics. Did they come? Did they take part? Did they fill in the happy sheet that said they liked it? And do their quiz scores tell us that they've retained information and can recite it? And as I've said, that's a very poor indicator of learning. But if you want to use a modern XAPI system, XAPI is short for Experience API. They'll do levels 1 to 7 because they can track everything that's kind of fact-based or data-based. Plus, they can collect the levels, evidence of activity at levels 5, 6, and 7. And that's where you're starting to get really good evidence of impact to learning on job performance. But I'd recommend you read Will Thalheimer's paper. Really, really good guide, and he goes into great detail about how to achieve that point of learning transfer. So moving on, what does this mean for learning design? Well, think very carefully about activities. That's where Gilly's eTivity stuff comes in, and lean towards real world action. You learn, if you make it just an intellectual exercise, it won't be retained. It needs to be used. And if you want to follow up on some of that, if you do a Google search for situated learning or situated cognition, you'll see what I mean. And also there's Professor Art Cohen, so ART, and his surname is KOHN, where he talks about spaced repetition, about how do you actually reinforce learning, how do you actually make it carry from the screen to the real world. So think about your learning designs on that basis. And then how are you going to capture evidence of application? Provide scaffolding for learners. Quizzes don't do this, they just test immediate recall. What you really want to be doing is looking at, can the learner describe the learning experience? What happened? What did they do in reaction to it? What do they know now that they didn't know before? How have they applied what they've learned? What can they do now that they couldn't do before, or can do better because of the learning experience? And then finally, in the reflections point, it's, well, what went well, what didn't go so well, what might you do differently, what values did you use, and then an action plan about what you're going to do in the future. I'm going to skip past this because we're running out of time. And the final point on this is incentivize the process. We use open badges to do that. And since lockdown started, we've added 3,500, 4,000 new learners and counting. And we've awarded, let me think, somewhere near 9,000 badges. And if you design open badges the right way, you will absolutely incentivize learning. And we've seen it happen, where people come in to do a badge and all of a sudden they're sitting at 50 in their account. So incentivize the learning. So for an example of how all of that kind of works in practice, later this summer, we're launching a new service called My Learning that will run on smartphones. And behind the scenes, it's using Experience API to record all of your learning, and it includes things like a plugin for your web browser, so you can just, if you've watched a video or if you've read an article online, you can click the wee link at the top of your browser, and it will record that in your learning account, and you can then go in and write a piece about how you've used what you learned through doing that activity. So My Learning came about because social service workers told us they were tired of having evidence or CPD in several different places. They didn't like that their employers, their regulator and learning providers all use different systems that don't talk to each other. So what we did is we put the learner right at the heart of the system. and we built the My Learning around them. And what we've tried to do is create a system that just works. So if you claim a badge, it will automatically appear in your My Learning account, and vice versa. If you claim learning from your smartphone, it'll automatically appear in your badge account as well. It'll connect all of your learning together, and what it'll let you do is generate reports on your CPD. Almost, all you'll need to do is select a date range and hit create report, and it will create a PDF report of your learning, and you can then choose to send it to whomever you like. You might just want it for your own pleasure, or you might want to send it to a line manager, mentor, supervisor, or regulator. So we're going to be using My Learning as a way of doing CPD for the registered workforce, but My Learning isn't just about registered workers. It's going to be free for anybody. So anybody who works in the sectors, whether it be health or social services, or even if they don't work but are volunteers or informal carers, there'll be no barriers to use. Anybody can download and set up an account, which is the case with our Open Badge platform and with our learning resources. We make everything openly available and free to anybody that wants it. So My Learning will allow folk to start to create records and keep track of their learning. So when Nessa was asking about e-portfolios earlier, here's my answer: forget portfolios and start looking at systems like My Learning. And that's a really quick canter through everything about making a difference. And that's me at the end of my slides, Nessa. So I'll stop screen sharing here, hopefully, if it'll allow me. Yeah, my mouse has disappeared again.
Thank you, Keith.
There we go, stop share, that's it. So I'll restart my camera.
Right, folks, now's your chance. Keith's looking worried. Right, we have lots of lovely comments about the fact that it's been really helpful and useful, and thank you for sharing the link. So that's really good. Thanks, everybody. I'm glad that's been helpful. And just a personal comment for me, it's really good to have somebody be so kind of open about what works and what doesn't work. And a specific question asking about, let me pick it up, does the SSSC have online materials on health literacy or good communication skills?
We have one of our ebooks is about communication and relationships, and it talks about the communication skill stuff. We don't have anything specific on health literacy. At the beginning of the pandemic, we did some really quick stuff around information literacy, but not specific to health. It was the stuff that we put out was much more about how to find trustworthy information online, how to do a good search, all that kind of stuff. What to do with how to judge the information when you get it, because there's been a lot of misinformation online, and unfortunately things like this pandemic seem to bring out the folk who like to create, I'm not going to say 5G, but there's a whole bunch of misinformation. So we put out, I think it's 5 PDFs, they're only 2 pages, but they're let us say, they're just about general information literacy.
I think one thing that's come up actually, and I don't know if this was something that Leslie who put the question was thinking about, but some of the projects we've been involved with from a digital health and care point of view, we've seen increase in interest in digital literacy, as they were calling it, but the ability for people to use digital tools full stop.
All right.
They can then take on some of the health and care resources and tools that we want them to be able to use.
Yeah.
But they're sort of still at a point, not just service users, citizens, patients, whatever your language is, but everybody, staff included, that if you don't have some basic digital literacy skills. I'm not too comfortable with that phrase, but I don't know what else to call it at the moment.
Yeah, that's where our 23 digital comes in.
Right.
23 digital is actually 23 digital capabilities.
Yeah.
And it's, I mean, the link is part of the slides. I would encourage you to go have a look. One of the things you'll notice is that it's non-linear. It doesn't require you to start at 1 and work through to 23. You can basically jump in and out wherever you choose. It makes no assumptions about what you know or don't know. And what's been interesting with 23 Digital is, I mean, it's been really popular across health and social services. We thought that it would be mostly folk who were in social services that would use it, but we've had a high number of people for the health services using it. And we recently were told that one health board had told their staff, do 23 Digital. So it's really popular. It's short bits of learning, and it's topic based, and it includes things like, you know, safe use of social media. One of the first things it does is get you to set up a blog and claim a badge, but it walks you through how to do that in that piece of learning. And we really do that right at the beginning, because we want people to use blogs to record their reflective learning, but also to show them that things that they think might be scary are actually really straightforward. And we've had people sign up and create blogs who, I mean, there was one person that sticks in my head who'd never even owned a smartphone or any mobile phone, didn't have an email account, and was introduced to 23 Digital, and within 3 hours had set up a blog, had her own email address, and they started claiming open badges. So, I mean, it's a really flexible tool. And, you know, we kind of use that, and we keep looking at it and you know, tinkering here and there and updating bits and pieces. So it's very much a living resource. And we will amend and update as and when, you know, and it's becoming part of a suite of tools. So the next thing we're looking at is 23 things for technology-enabled care, and we're going to use a similar kind of format. So yeah, that if you're interested in basic digital skills, go there.
Right, thank you, excellent. Another point that. Sorry, I'm just trying to look at the chat at the same time, which is, I can't do two things at the same time, obviously. So some people were asking about the recording. So we plan to make the recording available on the tech website, tech.scot, but very happy, obviously, to share with Keith if you want to add it or link to it on the SSC website as well. We'll also share a PDF of Keith's slides, just so people can share those with colleagues. That might be more easy for some people to do. Another question that I had really, so I'm encouraging people, put questions in the chat or unmute yourself and ask if you want to, if I've missed a question there. So the other question I had was, I just wanted to come back slightly, two things actually, two separate things. So one quick thing, MyLearn, can I do that? Absolutely anyone can do that?
Anyone. It's we were releasing it, I think, August, September. It will be coming out. So if you keep an eye on the, I think I can't remember what our Twitter account is. Hang on, I'll just have a wee look here, because I do have it.
At SSC Learn.
Yeah, at SSC Learn Tech. If you keep an eye on that, we'll be, you know, putting stuff out there. It'll be in SSC News and stuff like that. But we're making that available to anyone. I mean, it's a complete open door. We're really keen for non-paid people who are involved with somebody in a caring capacity to start using it. And the reason why we focus so much on informal carers and volunteers is that we know that in terms of recruitment to the social service workforce, they are the primary pool of potential recruits. And if we can get them started on the process of recording and maintaining records of their learning at an early stage, before they even come for employment, then so much the better. But I mean, as well as making our stuff freely available to anyone, and My Learning is going to be like that. It's going to be just like the badge platform. Anybody can use it. We also make our resources available, or most of them available, as open educational resources. So
Sorry
yeah.
to interrupt, because we have a question which also relates to that about open badges and can they be accessed anywhere? So if somebody is really just trying to find out about open badges, and I was in that position last year, because actually I thought about using the open badges as something that we could have for the Digital Health and Care Learning Network Day, so that everybody who went to the Learning Network Day could potentially have an open badge. I know there are different levels of them depending on what kind of activity you do, but if somebody really is at the entry level and just wants to know more about open badges and where they or their colleagues or students could go.
Yep, I've just posted the link to the badge platform.
Thank you.
It's basically, if you go into your browser and type in badges.sssc.uk.com, it will take you there. And there's a whole section on the badge platform which is called Getting Started. And there's video walkthroughs, and I mean, there's a massive amount of support material there. You can browse through and see what kinds of badges are available. And I mean, I think we're sitting at, there are something like, Rob will kill me, I think it's something like 400 badges, might be more. So that we've got badges. I mean, basically my team will badge everything that stands still long enough. Because we want people to get recognition and credit for the learning that they're doing. And we use the badge criteria to really encourage that thing about learning and transfer. So we don't want to just know that you've read an ebook. What we want to know is how you've used what you've learned in your work practice.
Yeah, I really like, again,
yeah.
sorry I'm interrupting, I really like the points you made about the flipped classroom idea. And I would imagine if you're in a position of having to turn more, or freshly in a position of having to turn content into online accessible content, that's a helpful point to think about, that sharing content in advance and then using the time that you do have for the discussion and the kind of investigation to have people understood it.
I mean, because the other point to make about badges is once you've earned a badge, so once you've been awarded a badge, you can then share that badge on wherever you want. You put it on your blog, you can put it on your social media, you can put it anywhere you want. The whole point about digital badges is that it's not only is it an image, you know, a nice pretty picture, but if you're using that for CPD purposes and you're trying to give evidence of what you've learned and you share it with your line manager, for example, if they click that image, it will take them right through to the evidence that you submitted to get the badge. So it's, again, an open badge is not a static image only. It's a living thing that you can, and it will give access to what did you learn, what were the criteria, and what was your evidence that you submitted to get the badge. So yeah, I mean, have a look at, go to the badge platform at that address and have a look at the Getting Started material. There's a whole, I mean, there's a wee generic video right on the front page that explains what open badges are. But then when you go into the Getting Started section, there's a whole bunch of support videos that literally walk you through every process to use the platform.
Okay, thank you. That's really helpful. Another point somebody's made, or a question, that if we're going to share your slides as a PDF, obviously that means the links are not so accessible. I think I've shared most, if not all, of the links in the chat as we've gone along, but probably what would be easier is if I just share the links again by email, because obviously everybody who registered for this webinar, I should have an email address for you, so I can do that afterwards. That's not a problem.
And actually, when I export, I mean, I was saying to Nessa, I'm terrible for tinkering with presentations. So I have been tinkering this morning. So I'm going to give her an updated PDF with, you know, the final version of all these slides.
Then.
And I will make sure that the links are live. So if you open the PDF in Acrobat Reader and you click a link, Acrobat should ask you, is it okay to open this link? You
Okay.
know, it'll actually ask you, and if you say yes, it'll take you to whatever the website is.
Okay. Another quick one. How do you manage the assessing of the materials to gain an open badge? So how does that work?
Yeah, there's a funny story about that. I mean, essentially, every open badge application that comes in is looked at by a person, and that's a person in my team. Um, we have, Nessa knows George in my team, George Burton, who's one of the advisors in my team. And him and Barry Wilson, who's also in my team, were at an event, and they met somebody, and Barry said, "Oh, this is George Burton," and she said, "Oh, he's real." And they kind of looked at her like, "What do you mean?" They thought George was a chatbot. They thought he was code because they thought that when you applied for a badge, it was just computer assessed. But they're not. They're actually looked at by every one of them is looked at by a member of my team.
So you will have
Um,
criteria that,
and sorry, in order to cope with the volume as we upscale the whole platform, and we are continuously upscaling, we're building in a function called peer assessment, and it's based on a model developed by the University of Toronto and it's a university in Belgium that escapes me, the name escapes me at the moment. But it's a heavily researched model, and we're applying that to the badge platform so that folk who are experienced badge claimers, if you like, folk who've got badges will be involved in doing peer assessment to help us cope with the high volume.
okay, excellent. I know we're coming up to the hour. I just want to say thank you to absolutely everybody who joined, but especially Keith for being so open and sharing. And I do have a quick final question, if we can spend our last 2 minutes. Karen's made a point. She's saying that the only barrier she can think of in putting the badges in place is managing the volume. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
So my question, I didn't want us to be overwhelmed by COVID, but I want to ask a question now. You mentioned that since lockdown really, and since the start of all this, the open badges, you've seen a significant increase. I suppose my question is really, what is your reflection in terms of providers? Are they being more willing to grab it? Because in digital health and care, I'll give you a parallel. We're certainly seeing a much more rapid scaling up and much more willingness for people to actually talk and make things happen.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a couple of aspects. One is it's kind of confirmed what we already knew, that time was the biggest barrier to learning. So a lot of the big upsurge has been for early years workers who've been furloughed. So we've always known that time is an issue. And that's been, that's confirmed that. But the other things that have really struck us is that the pandemic has created an environment where people are like, let's just get this done, let's deal with the barriers and push them out the way and just get on with things. Because the other big thing that's really a massive shift for social service workers is that the use of cameras in care environments was, so taboo. People were very, very wary and very anxious about any notion that you would have a camera-enabled device in a care environment. And what we know now through our contacts in the sector is that folk are not only using cameras, for themselves, but we've got lots and lots of examples where care staff are using their own devices to help people in care homes stay in touch with their relatives where they don't have a device of their own. So the whole thing about cameras and the discomfort has just disappeared. And people are much more comfortable with doing things like having events like this on Zoom, using smartphones and tablets to help people communicate with relatives. I mean, there's loads and loads of examples online. It'd take you just 2 minutes to look, where there are people even in intensive care units talking about using tablets to enable people to say goodbye. I mean, I think that I mean, the pandemic is in many ways a horrific experience, and I wouldn't want to underplay that. But I think in terms of the work that we do, I think the biggest change has been the attitude to doing things online. Because if I'm being really, really honest, let's face the facts here. We are not going back into classrooms and training centres anytime soon. So we need to get, if we're starting in digital learning, we need to get good at it pretty quick. And if we're already involved, we need to get better just as quick.
Okay, that's a brilliant place for us to draw a close, I think. I will put in a pitch for you to come back and maybe do another one around the technology-enabled care.
Yep.
You say you're doing the 23 things, I can't say that, too many THs together, 23 things technology-enabled care. Oh, it's all
Yeah.
to finish on a laugh. Thanks again, Keith. That's been extremely refreshing and interesting. I hope for everybody who joined in as well, but certainly for me. So that's been brilliant. I will call an end to this and let people get on with the rest of their day. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Thanks for your patience, folks.